What kind of bird is that?
It's a minor bird.
Does it talk?
WotC sucks.
Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well today. Well, the day has finally come that we are leaving the 5th edition of D&D and Wizards of the Coast in my long-standing Birthright campaign. I know the group has seen my frustration, especially as of late with 5e. After the group exited the great Barrow Maze adventure, scarred but triumphant, I asked if they would consider moving to another system. To my surprise, there was more or less agreement that 5e, as fun as it was at first, had kind of run its course and become a tad stale. Now, maybe the group was seeing some of what I was seeing. And by the way, I should say that if you're enjoying 5e, you should not feel that you have to change just because I or others have. There are some reasons I think that even if you are playing 5e, you should stop buying anything that Wizards of the Coast puts out for it from now on. But you are the final arbiter at your table, and if it's still fun, then by all means, please keep playing it. I should also add that I do not blame any of my players for taking advantage of these rules over the years, as broken as I think some of them are. But here are, in no particular order, some of the reasons 5e frustrated me and our group into changing up. So 5e becomes an insanely cheesy game at a certain point. For instance, beginning at 2nd level, wizards can sculpt evocation spells like Fireball to exclude other PCs and friendlies. This means that a group of PCs can almost literally encircle a foe, and a wizard is able to launch a spell that blossoms into an explosion of flame and not hurt anyone but the target. Now, I'm sure there are some who will try to explain it away with in-game logic, but to me, it's just super, super cheesy. Now, what if I told you that over the course of a few years, in a party that's included rangers, fighters, barbarians, and paladins, that it was often Crazy Mouse's rogue who consistently dealt out the most damage? Being able to get sneak attack damage just by fighting side by side with a fellow PC never did feel quite right to me. To be able to use backstab and continue to get that same bonus while fighting alongside warriors who don't get it seems like a betrayal of what a rogue is supposed to be and what a fighter is, for that matter. If you think about it, being a fighter includes hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of training in finding a weak spot in a melee opponent. Yet when they and the rogue are side by side fighting that same foe in front of them, it's only the rogue that gets a bonus for something that should be entirely reliant on stealth. I think the best way to do it is how it's handled in many of the OSR games, where the rogue must always sneak or hide their way behind a foe in order to deal that massive amount of damage. Now, couple this with cunning action, which allows a rogue to dip in and out of combat, as well as evasion. You have a very, very powerful class, bordering on overpowered. There's other things too. The Eldritch Knight in and of itself can be a bit much. And on the DM side, when you're piling lair actions on top of legendary actions, the players often get a taste of their own medicine in the form of an overpowered beatdown. Many times in 5e, I was throwing opponents at the PCs that I thought would really threaten them. I was often left almost slack-jawed as they went through them as easy as the 85 Chicago Bears went through their schedule. I know, I'm a bad DM, blah, blah, blah. And while I'm not perfect, believe it or not, I would actually research and get feedback on some of these encounters online, and it still didn't matter. If the PCs were able to bring their full force to bear on a foe, he was essentially dead meat in record time. This then necessitates the DM hurling swarms of foes at the PCs to keep them each individually busy, which then risks going too far in the other direction. At times I would find the right rhythm of monster encounters, but if the PCs went up a level, a couple of them would earn some game-changing abilities that would kind of throw it all out the window and the process would start anew. Let me know in the comments below if any of you 5e DMs have had similar issues with scaling combat in this system. Perhaps this isn't just a D&D problem, and it's also why the OSR is becoming so popular with so many people. But modern RPGs are centered around players and story, sometimes to a fault. Plot immunity and all that. 5e embraces this too. The player-DM balance, which started in the DM's favor in the early days and began tilting in the player's direction by 3rd edition, is now irrevocably on the player's side. It always seems to work best to me when there's a nice equality between the two.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
It can be hard to kill PCs outright in 5e without using powerful magic or special abilities. And I actually have no problem with the concept of death saves. But as the Beckme Berserker pointed out in his video, the way they're implemented is slightly ludicrous. PCs can make their saves and, as written, pop back up and start fighting. A near-death experience should not be that easy to bounce back from.
TJ, what am I doing here?
Maybe if you roll a 20 on your very first save. Other than that, you should be out of the combat. You should be out until you can get proper medical attention, even if you eventually do make your saves. Classes sometimes seem to get game-breaking abilities as they progress. The Eldritch Knight gets the benefits of an old-school multi-classed wizard and fighter with seemingly none of the sacrifices. My friend Rogan's Eldritch Knight was trapped inside a Barrowmaze tomb with the walls closing in. But no worries, Misty stepped to the rescue. They kind of keep outdoing themselves and trying to placate players with the shiniest toys. And now, of course, as we know, the players are starting to have unprecedented editorial control over the story through the use of safety tools. This is something that Wizards of the Coast embraces in 5e, too. Don't like the giant spider that the DM is throwing at your party? Just throw up the old X card and say that you have arachnophobia. Presto. No more spider. Didn't happen. And they're wondering why there's a DM shortage. It just seems that 5e encourages more focus on what the players are out of the box, so to speak, rather than who they are as a result of their adventures. The default seems to be that the characters will always live. Now, sure, even in the most min-maxed 5e campaign, the PCs will probably feel threatened when they're geared up to fight the big boss monster. But do they ever get that feeling during a random encounter with a thief their character stumbles on, late at night in a lonely alley of the dark city?
Please, there's no reason to fear me. I import you. I am a holy man.
I'm the King of France.
Your Majesty.
I mean, why would they? With death saves and inspiration and other things, the PCs have the advantage every single time. And if the players in the back of their mind are not feeling threatened, it's going to be hard for them to feel invested in the world over time. Part of the reason they have a feeling of invulnerability is the healing system and rests. If your party has access to a cleric, the in-combat healing spells like Healing Word can tip the balance of a combat straight into a cakewalk. Even if they don't have a cleric, the PCs can use 1 and 8-hour rests to completely reset their health. Yes, I know the DM can just throw wandering monster after wandering monster to prevent this.
A monster! A monster! A Goreville! A Goreville! A Goreville!
But at some point, that ends up looking almost vindictive. And it's actually not good DMing, in my opinion. You can have a hard-fought battle in which some of the players had to make death saves, and others are below 5 hit points, in which they emerge victorious by the skin of their teeth. Yet if they can find a quick place to hole up in, they can walk out 8 hours later as if nothing happened. I'm sorry, but that's just fundamentally wrong. The design of 5e seems to encourage some overlap of abilities that in earlier editions of the game were the domain of particular classes. I mentioned before the rogue, who often deals out more damage than the barbarian or fighter. Yet in our campaign, that same rogue got outperformed a few times in what is supposed to be his real specialty, finding traps and secret doors. This was not by another rogue, by the way, but a fighter who happened to take the Dungeon Delver feat. They also cram powerful magic into classes like the Ranger and Fighter. An astounding 9 of the 12 base classes in the player's handbook are capable of casting magic, which makes the Wizard and Sorcerer much less unique. You're almost fundamentally unable to play a low magic setting out of the box in 5e. It's so embedded into the fabric. Now, like a married couple that's run out of steam, I think it was just time for us to move on. But like a jilted spouse who decides to go scorched earth after a separation, Wizards of the Coast is making this decision seem like a very, very easy one, especially with their actions as a company lately. First, there was the OGL fiasco, which we all know, which exposed a shocking lack of communication, market knowledge, and business savvy. Then there was a shameless and completely unnecessary hate speech clause proposed for a modified OGL, which would have been nothing more than a vehicle to launch their leftist worldview in time. Finally, there were the recent comments of D&D executive producer Kyle Brink, who stated that white men like him can't leave fast enough for the hobby. Wizards is showing themselves to be a company that doesn't seem to care about their past or present audience. This is going to lead to some serious problems in the future, namely with 1D&D, the next edition. The 6th edition of the game promises to be a continuation, more or less, of 5e. And they're promising, with things like the removal of race, to make it into an even more watered-down gray goo, as RPG Pundit once said. Nothing about it as a game or Wizards of the Coast as a company much appeals to me anymore. So we are done with D&D, and we are not going to be coming back anytime soon.
Mazes and Monsters is a far-out game.
The future to us lies in the OSR. Now, which game did we choose to replace D&D with? I will let you know that in a future video. Suffice to say that I think we're all excited to play a game that gives the same D&D experience with an old school feel, written by people that don't actively hate us. All right, well, that's all for now. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to throw a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss any future videos or our fun live streams. Now, you guys go out there, have a great rest of the day, and we will talk soon. Goodbye.
What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Was Double D a
Doper.
No.
Downers.
No.
Drink.
Well, like